Hi there, this is Christopher Panaretos, author of the Languages book series on Amazon. And in this video, I'm going to be showing how to translate a sentence in English into Hindi. So the sentence to translate is going to be the sentence, she will give him the car. And to start the translation, let's figure out what type of sentence we have here. So the first word here, she, that's the subject. And then we've got the verb here, will give. And then we've got a direct object, the car. And then we have an indirect object. So those components, subject, verb, indirect object, and then also a direct object, that is a so-called ditransitive scene. And this is our English version of the ditransitive scene. And we could fill in the English words here. Okay. So when we translate into Hindi, because we want to keep the same meaning of the original sentence, it's a good idea to just keep the same type of scene. So let's make the Hindi sentence also a ditransitive scene. But for the Hindi sentence, for a Hindi ditransitive scene, we have to check the order of these components, these four components, subject, verb, indirect object, and direct object, because they might be in a different order. So let's go to my Hindi book, and I've got a section on word order, and there's an entry on scenes right here. And so we'll go down to the ditransitive scene. So here it shows the Hindi ditransitive scene blueprint, and it starts with the subject, but then it goes to the indirect and direct objects right afterwards, with the verb coming at the very end of the sentence. Okay, so this is a different order of those four components. So let's write those components in their Hindi order. So indirect object, and then direct object. And then the verb always comes at the very end of the sentence in Hindi. So if we write the English words here, because we haven't done any translating yet, we would have she, him, the car, will give. That would be the order of the words in Hindi. Okay. So to start off our translation, I'll copy this components down to the next page, and then we'll start with our first word here, which is the word she. That's going to be translated into Hindi. And this word she, this is a personal pronoun, and we are interested in the Hindi personal pronoun, right? So the first thing we want to do is we want to learn a little bit about the Hindi personal pronoun. So I'm going to go to the summary of Hindi section, the beginning of the book, and here is the entry on the personal pronoun. So the Hindi personal pronoun has four characteristics. It's got perspective, gender, count, and case. So I'm going to write those four features here. And we're going to want to fill these features in, of course. So from the English she, we know that we've got third person perspective. Gender is going to be feminine. Count is going to be singular. And for the case, because she is operating as the subject here, that is probably going to be the direct case. So I'll say that this is the direct case. Cases in Hindi are kind of tricky. They're a little bit different from those in English, but I think direct is the best choice here. So now that we have our four features of our personal pronoun in Hindi, we just need a spelling table to choose the correct spelling. So spelling table is found in the section on personal pronouns. So here's the spelling table for the Hindi personal pronoun. In fact, there's actually two different spelling tables. So we have a spelling table for the kind of true personal pronoun, but it only actually covers the first and second person perspectives. There's another spelling table, which is actually literally is demonstrative pronouns, but in Hindi, it's actually used to represent third person pronouns. Demonstrative pronouns are the words like this, that, these, and those. And so this is just how Hindi chooses to represent third person personal pronouns. Um, so for our perspective, we have third person perspective. So that means we're going to be in this demonstrative pronoun table, um, which you might think is a little unusual, but again, that's just how Hindi does it. Um, and for this demonstrative pronoun table, the gender does not come into play, and the case also does not come into play. So we just are going to pay attention to the count, which is singular. And I believe for the singular, either one of these options is acceptable. So I'm just going to choose this particular word here, and I'll use that as the third person singular pronoun, personal pronoun. So I'll paste that word here. It's pronounced, I believe, va. Yep, that's right. Va. Yep. And Google Translate says that it could work for he or she. So hopefully that's the best possible, translation. You might have to just ask a native Hindi speaker, like how they prefer to translate the word she. I believe this is an acceptable translation. Okay, so I'm going to copy the sort of working sentence down here, and I'm going to get rid of the word she because we just translated that, and I'll replace it with our Hindi word. All right, take this down to a new page, and let's move on to the next component. So I believe this next component is also this is also a personal pronoun. Well, actually, I'll write. So we have English as him. Translate into Hindi. This is it's going to be a Hindi personal pronoun we are interested in. We just did a personal pronoun. We've got 4 features: perspective, gender, count, and case. Perspective, gender, count, and case. Him is going to be third person. It's going to be masculine. Count is going to be singular. And case is going to be, if I go to my personal pronoun section here, because we're talking about the indirect object here with him, I think it's going to be either indirect or dative. And I'm going to guess that it's the dative case. So this one's going to be a little tricky because we just did a third person singular. Which in theory would use these demonstrative pronouns again. But I don't want to use the same word as our subject translation. So I'm just going to go to Google Translate and I'm going to type him. So I'm getting this translation of use. And curious if Okay. So, so I'm no expert in Hindi. That's obvious. Um, but in terms of finding a translation for the word him, um, according to my spelling table, um, I believe I would be grabbing a word from this demonstrative pronoun section. Um, but that's I don't think that's the right choice because I've already got the subject as being uh, the singular distal demonstrative pronoun. So I went to Google Translate. I typed in the word him, and I got the word use. Um, and that's probably a better translation. I could take this word and type it into Wiktionary. Um, so it's showing that it is a pronoun, and it is the dative singular of va. Va, I believe, is uh, yeah, okay. Okay, so it's a different form of the singular distal demonstrative pronoun. This word use. So so what that means actually is that this demonstrative pronoun table is incomplete because it doesn't have any spellings for different cases. But apparently there are different spellings for different cases. So that means I'm going to have to go back and update this spelling table in my book because I'm simply missing that spelling. Um, but this is good because we have a different spelling for our indirect object, which makes more sense than having the same spelling as the subject. So we'll take this word that we got from Google Translate. We verified it on Wiktionary. And it does say it's dative, so it looks like we probably got the case correct. So I'll type that in there. So I'm going to copy our working translation down here. I'm going to take this translation for him that we just found, and I'll paste it into the working translation here. And I'll move on to the next component here. So this is the direct object. We've got the actual direct object, which is car, and then we've got the definite article. So we have two words to translate. We've got English's car. That's going to be some word in Hindi. And car is a thing. So we're going to be looking at Hindi things. And Hindi things are going to have some set of features. And then we've also got the word the, which is the definite article. And we will try to translate this into Hindi as well. And we may have some set of features for the Hindi definite article. So let's start with the word for car. So we can take a look at Hindi things first, I guess, and learn a little bit more about Hindi things work. So in the summary of Hindi section, it says that Hindi things have three characteristics: gender, count, and case. So I'm going to write those three features down here. Count and case. For count and case, we can fill those in now. So count is going to be singular for one car. The case, because it's a direct object, that's most likely the indirect, or also called the oblique case. So I'm gonna write indirect case. For the gender, we can't really guess what gender car is considered in Hindi. So I'm going to go to Google Translate. I'm going to type it in, and I'm going to get one of the possible spellings for, or get a translation for car in Hindi. And just be aware that this is only one of probably several possible spellings. So I'm gonna copy this Hindi translation for car. I'm gonna go back to Wiktionary. I'm gonna paste in this translation, and I'm gonna hope that we get a Hindi entry in Wiktionary, which we do. So I want to go to the Hindi page, and there's several different meanings from this word. One is tax. That's not what we want. Another is work or do. That's not what we want either. And the third meaning of this word is car. That is a good meaning for us. That's what we want. So we have some information here. So we've got the sort of base spelling for the noun here, or the thing. We've got the pronunciation, and then we also have this F here, and this F means feminine gender. So now we have our gender of our Hindi word for car, and that completes our three features. So what we want to do now is we want to see if there's a spelling table for our Hindi word for car, which there is right here. So I'm going to click on that and open it up, and we can see that there's 6 different possible spellings for the Hindi word for car, and those depend on the count, singular, plural, or the case, direct, indirect or oblique, and vocative. And so for our thing here, we actually don't need the gender for this particular word because it only depends on count and case. So we'll use our singular count and indirect or oblique, I should say, aka oblique. So our singular and oblique spelling is this spelling right here. I guess it's pronounced car, and so I can just paste that in there as our translation for English is car. Okay, so we found a translation for car. Let's go down to our definite article, and we want to read up a little bit about the definite article in Hindi. This is the entry for articles, and actually it says here that Hindi does not use the definite article. It doesn't exist in the language. So that means that our excuse me. That means that our English definite article simply may not have any translation into Hindi. And if we go down to the section on spelling rules, it says very clearly here the indefinite article does not exist. So it turns out that in Hindi, the indefinite article does not exist. And so there is simply no literal translation of the definite article. Okay, so I'm just going to delete this definite article entry here. So there is no definite article. So we end up with a translation for car, and then we don't even have to worry about translating the, because it doesn't exist. So I'll translate or copy our working translation down. I'll get rid of the phrase the car, and I'll replace it with our translation for just the word car. Okay, so we're almost there. So we've got this last component here, which is the verb. We've got English's will give, and then we want to translate that into Hindi. Will give, of course, is a form of the verb to give, the infinitive form. And our Hindi verb is also going to have some infinitive base form, and then we'll use that to find the spelling table for the verb. So we are going to be interested in Hindi verbs. There's going to be some set of features for Hindi verbs, which we can look up here. So for Hindi, verbs have 4 different characteristics. They've got mood, they've got tense, they've got aspect, and they have subject agreement. So I want to write those aspects here. Aspect and subject agreement. And then the agreement is with specifically the perspective, gender, and count of the subject. All right. So the mood, we've got a few options. Indicative, subjunctive, imperative. For this sentence, let's go with the indicative mood because our sentence, she will give him the car, is just a statement of fact, and that is the indicative mood. Tense, we know from English, that's going to be future tense. And aspect is a little bit different from English. So English has imperfect and perfect aspect. Hindi actually has 4 categories of aspect. So it can be a little hard to choose the correct one. We can say something, so we're definitely not progressive aspect. Progressive is like the ing form, running, hiking, skiing. That's progressive. It's also called continuous. So we do not have that in our example. We just have will give. It's not habitual because she will give him the car. It sounds like it's just happening once, so that's definitely not habitual. Um, and because we have future tense, I'm not sure if the perfect aspect is correct. I think maybe future perfect would be like will have given, right? It's future, but it's talking about something that happened before a certain other time in the future. We just have the verb will give. So I'm just going to guess that non-habitual aspect is the best choice here. You'd have to ask a native Hindi speaker their opinion, of course, but that's what I'm just going to use for this particular translation. And then for the subject, we can just go back to our previous work because we already translated the subject. So our subject was she, translated as va, and we already have its 4 features, and the 3 that matter for the verb are the prospective, gender, and count. So third feminine singular. So we can fill this feminine singular. Okay. So at this point, we've got our 4 features of our verb, and all we need to do is find a verb in Hindi that has the same meaning as to give. So I want to copy this verb to give, the infinitive form. I'll paste it into Google Translate here. It's giving me 2 different words. I'm going to get rid of this 2, and maybe that'll be this is the actual verb that I'm interested in. So I don't know if this is the right verb, obviously. So I'm going to copy this Hindi word that I got from Google Translate. I'm going to go back to Wiktionary. I'll paste that word into Wiktionary that I got from Google Translate. And I'm going to hope that there's an entry for a Hindi word. There is here. It appears to be listed as a verb. And that verb does have at least one of its meanings is to give. So this appears to be a good word, a good verb to use for our translation. So this is our infinitive form. And what we need now to find the proper spelling of our verb is we're going to want to go to the spelling table. It's going to be this personal forms. And here we have a long list of different spellings for our verb. And we are going to need to use our 4 features to find the proper spelling in the spelling table. So the first thing, actually, we'll take a look at the aspect. So we have our non-aspect, we have our non-habitual, we have habitual, we've got our perfective aspect, and our progressive aspect. That's the sort of major divisions in the spelling table here. So we wanted the non-habitual aspect, which is listed right here. So the non-habitual aspect is all these spellings in this upper block right here. The next thing we can look at is the mood. So for our mood, we have indicative mood, and that is going to be the spellings for this block here. So all of these spellings are for the non-habitual aspect and indicative mood, which is what we want. So we've narrowed things down to this block of spellings. Let's look at the tense, which is going to be future. And we do have the future tense listed here, right? FUT for future. And so now we've narrowed it down to this block of spellings. And then all we need to do is to get the information from our subject, third feminine singular. So we have, we are interested in the singular count. That's putting us in these four spellings here. It's going to be third person. So that's right here. And then, so one of these two spellings, and then it is feminine. Yep, feminine. So that is actually going to narrow us down to this particular spelling right here. Apparently it's pronounced degi. So I'm going to copy this particular spelling. That's going to be a spelling that we take as our best possible translation of English's to give, or will give. So will give should be roughly equivalent to this word in Hindi. So now that we've got the verb translated, I'm going to copy our working translation down. I'm going to copy the spelling that we got from our spelling table for the verb. Get rid of this verb here. And this is now our Hindi translation. And that was coming from our English. She will give him the car. That was what we started with. So we can get rid of these extra symbols here. And if you want to know how to pronounce it, you can always try to put it into Google Translate. So that's what I'm going to do here. So the pronunciation should be something like Ba use kar dige or digi. So I'll space these words out a little bit. Okay. And if we retranslated this back into English literally, of course we would have she, him, car, will give, right? So that's where you can really see where the components of this ditransitive scene is different from English. The subjects both come at the start of the sentence. In Hindi, however, the verb goes at the very end of the sentence, and then the indirect object and the direct object are sandwiched in between, right? So again, so we started with she will give him the car. We broke this down into a ditransitive sentence. We translated each of the words in each component one by one based on the features of those Hindi words and their spelling tables. And we ended up with the sentence right here, Va se kar de gay. And hopefully that is a pretty decent translation and preserves generally the same meaning as what we had in English. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next one.